book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs is about wisdom. Wisdom is not about knowing facts. It's knowing what to do with what you know. It's knowing when to do it or how to do it. The Proverbs are typically short. They give wisdom and insight into everyday things. They are intended to help you lead a better life. I think that's why you're here, isn't it? You want to know God, and you want to learn to figure out how to live this life. Proverbs are kind of aimed at that. These are not absolute promises that if you do X, Y, and Z, these will always happen and your life will be perfect. That's an incorrect understanding of these. These are general principles. And if you will do them, if you live by them, your life will generally be better than if you don't. It's much better to pay attention to these things. So, Proverbs 27, verse 1. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth. Do not boast about tomorrow. And let me just say a quick word about plans, about making plans. Friends, it is a good thing to make plans. Don't take this verse and think that it means we should never make plans. We've already seen much in Proverbs about how important it is to make good plans for the future. For example, Proverbs 15:22, plans go wrong for lack of advice. Many advisors bring success. So it's a good thing. It's a wise thing to make plans for your life. Careful plans. We ask for advice. We and all. The problem with plans is when we don't leave room for God to move and give Him permission to change our plans. That's when we get frustrated. I make a plan and it doesn't happen. James writes, "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell, and make a profit. Whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that." See, that's how we need to take our plans. We need to make our plans, commit them to the Lord, but also be understanding that He can change things, can't He? And some of us have learned the hard way. We get frustrated. We've made careful plans, and our plans were not God's plans, One of my good friends, he helped us start our church 23 and a half years ago. He was one of our elders. His name was John Osmondson. And for the first couple years, he ran our soundboard. He was the guy in the back when we were at the YMCA and when we were at the Ice House. And he would run the soundboard. He taught David, I shouldn't be letting the secret out, but David knows how to run sound because David learned how to run sound when he was in 8th grade because John Osmondson, you remember John? Yeah, you remember John. John taught him how to run sound. John was a great, great fellow. And he and his wife Pam eventually moved up north. And we lost touch for a year or so until one morning I got a phone call from his wife Pam. And John and Pam, I got a phone call from her on a Wednesday. And the day before, on October 12th, 2004, it's a Tuesday morning, John and Pam are laying in bed. She senses John rolling over in bed, and he rolls right off the bed onto the floor, and he was dead. Just like that. No warning, I never heard whatever happened. He rolled over and died. He rolled over and went to heaven. You don't know what your life is like in the future. And so we ought to say, if the Lord wills. My life is in His hand. I'm not trying to sound morbid and all, but the honest reality is we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So we make our plans. We do our best. Much of my life, I've made plans. And here we are today. Not all the plans happen. Making plans may be a great blessing. Your plans might come about beyond your wildest dreams, or not. We should say, if the Lord wills, and learn to be happy with what God does in our lives. Verse 2, Let another man praise you, and not your own mouth, a stranger, and not your own lips. Let another man praise you. So we all kind of like to have a little pat on the back every once in a while, don't you? Does anybody in here like to have a pat on the back? Somebody say, good job, you did a good job, right? Good. I'm raising both hands. Yeah, I'm with you, Maurice. I like it. I like it when people say good job. The problem is when we pat ourselves on the back, that's the problem. I just have to say, our president could learn from this, because we pray for him, we love him, we want him to do well, we want our country to do well, but he hasn't learned this, and he feels like he has to praise himself. 2 geese were about to start southward for their annual autumn migration when they were begged by a frog to take him with them. Well, the geese were willing to help, but they didn't know how to do this, and the frog was going to need to figure out a way for them to carry him. So the frog got a long stalk of grass, and he had each goose take an end of the long stalk, and he clung to the middle of it with his mouth. So it's an interesting contraption as they take off and they're flying along. And there was some men on the ground noticed this strange thing. There's 2 geese, with this frog clinging to this blade of grass, and they yell up at them, and they say, who's smart enough to think of that kind of a thing? Well, the proud frog opened his mouth and he said, it was me! And he lost his hold and he fell to the earth. Moral of the story, when you have a good thing going, keep your mouth shut. Right? Have you learned that? See, I get a good thing going. I want to advertise it and put it in the paper and put it in lights and let everybody know. Take selfies and all that kind of stuff. Look what I did. Keep your mouth shut. Verse 3, a stone is heavy and sand is weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than both of them. New Living Translation says, I like the little twist on here. It says, a stone is heavy and sand is weighty, but the resentment caused by a fool is even heavier. I like that. The resentment caused by a fool. So when a fool is angry at you, you should let it go. Because he's just a fool. You should let it go. You just let it go. Verse 4, wrath is cruel and anger a torrent, but who is able to stand before jealousy? We've said a lot about, and I'm not going to say a lot about this, but we've talked a lot about anger and the dangers of anger and all. And we think about how bad it is to be angry, but he's saying jealousy is even worse. Verse 5, open rebuke is better than love carefully concealed. The Message paraphrase says this, a spoken reprimand is better than approval that's never expressed. Communication is a good thing. It's a good thing to open your mouth every once in a while and let the people around you know what you're thinking. That's not a bad thing. Communication is a good thing. And it's better that someone who's upset tells you about it than wondering what's going on in their mind, right? Isn't it better? I don't like the silent treatment, do you? It's better to have it expressed to you. And it's nice that someone loves you, but, like it never does any good if they never tell you. There's the old story of the man and wife who've been married for 30 years, and she finally says to him, "Why, do you still love me?" And he said, "Well, I told you 30 years ago at the altar, things haven't changed. I'd let you know if it changes, No. Don't conceal your love. Be open. Talk. Let's talk. Verse 6, faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. I'm going to call the lesson here loving wounds. Don't be too quick to be upset at a friend. who might say something that hurts your feelings. Hopefully they said it because they care about you. You know, sometimes we get so caught up in the fact that I get so caught up in the fact that my feelings have been hurt. You know, when I start calming down a little bit, and after I've walked away, I know they're right, but still, my feelings are hurt. You know, it actually should be a scary thing if people are only saying nice things, if they're only kissing you. We would call that kissing up. Got to be careful when people are only kissing up to you. I mean, remember, Jesus was betrayed by a kiss. Norman Vincent Peale said, he wrote, the trouble with most of us is that we would rather be ruined by praise than saved by criticism. Jay Leno's first encounter with the man, most of you if you don't know who Jay Leno is, or the guy, or this guy, talk to your parents about it, okay? The rest of us understand what this is. Jay Leno's first encounter with the guy he would eventually replace was less than auspicious. You seem like a very funny young man, Johnny Carson told him after he caught his act at the Comedy Store. Carson said, but you don't have enough jokes. And Leno was devastated. And he recalls this. He says, when I watched the Carson show, I saw him do 15 or 20 jokes. I realized I'd only been doing 3 and relying on clowning and gestures for the rest of the laughs. I resented what Johnny had said, but I took it to heart and began honing my material. Years later, Carson asked me on his show. I've always been grateful to him for giving me real advice, as hard as it seemed at the time. This is about 10, 15 years after that advice. Watch the pace of the jokes.
The last time I was on the show here, I talked about buying my parents a video tape recorder for Christmas. Do you ever tell a little white lie and it gets you into a lot of trouble? You know what I'm talking about? You know, when I told my mom and dad, many of these are rhetorical questions, actually. Don't really require an answer, but of course. When I told my mom and dad I was going to get them this videotape recorder, right away my mom started in, oh, they're too expensive. They cost hundreds of dollars. Your father and I are going to be very upset if you spend a lot of money on a big gift. So I told a little white lie there. I said to my mom, I said, look, Mom, a friend of mine runs an appliance store here in town. He got it from me wholesale. It's only $25. Yesterday, I got a check in the mail from my mom for $100. She wants 4 more machines for the neighbors. I buy them these things, and they try to save money with it. Like every night my mom unplugs the VCR to save electricity and plugs it in again the next day, and she can't understand why the clock keeps going 12, 12, 12 all the time. Why don't they make wind-up clocks? They don't have wind-up clocks for VCRs, Mama.
Now, I just showed that to show you, did you notice the pace? He's going like this. He didn't tell a joke and then did a bunch of funny antics. He learned. He learned. Just like we've been seeing in the book of Proverbs. Being given good advice doesn't do you any good unless you do it, unless you learn from it. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. Verse 7, a satisfied soul loathes the honeycomb. I just can't eat another bite. But to a hungry soul, every bitter thing is sweet. It's not a bad thing to be hungry. You'll appreciate more in life. Maybe if we were more hungry for the things of God, anything God, anything from you. Verse 8, like a bird that wanders from its nest is a man who wanders from his place. This is a bit of a warning about the man who spends too much time away from home. He's setting up his family for trouble. Like a bird who wanders from its nest, because a bird needs to be around the nest to protect the young. Verse 9, ointment and perfume delight the heart, and the sweetness of a man's friend gives delight by hearty counsel. Verse 10, do not forsake your own friend or your father's friend, nor go to your brother's house on the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor nearby than a brother far away. The New Living Translation, I like the way they put it. Never abandon a friend, either yours or your father's. When disaster strikes, you won't have to ask your brother for assistance. It's better to go to a neighbor than to a brother who lives far away. And the simple idea is that, you know what, you got to cultivate your friendships. Some of us, we just kind of, I can get along without people. No, you can't. Cultivate your friendships. Your friends may be the ones who will be there to help when other people can't be. Verse 11, my son, be wise and make my heart glad, that I may answer him who reproaches me. I like the Message paraphrase. Become wise, dear child, and make me happy. Then nothing the world throws my way will upset me. I like that. I like that a lot. Verse 12, a prudent man foresees evil and hides himself. The simple pass on and are punished. Now this sounds familiar. It should, because it's identical, word for word, to Proverbs 22:3 in the simple lesson. We won't review it too much. It's just pay attention to those warning signs. Verse 13, take the garment of him who is surety for a stranger, a guy who co-signs on a loan for a stranger, and hold it in pledge when he is surety for a seductress. And this is identical to Proverbs 20:16, so we won't redo this. Remember, we're in a section of Proverbs that were collected and added later to the package. They were collected by Hezekiah 250 years after Solomon. So his guys went through, Solomon wrote something like 3,000 Proverbs. And I can't remember the number. I got a rough idea of the number that are actually contained in chapters 10 through, 22, something like that. We just got a little smidgen of them. So Hezekiah's men went through and found their favorites. Some of them are duplicates. They just liked it so good they wanted to say it again. Verse 14, he who blesses his friend with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, it will be counted a curse to him. Loud voice, rising early in the morning. I hope you understand what I'm about to say. In fact, what I'm really worried about is the people that need to understand this, it's going to go right over their heads. But I'm going to call this lesson aware. To be aware of your circumstances. Years ago when I was a youth pastor, we'd bring our youth group up to the mountains for the retreat stuff. We would do all that kind of stuff. And me and one of my best friends, Craig Campbell, some of you know Craig. Craig and Debbie used to be a part of our church years ago. We would play a prank in the morning on the young campers. And we'd get up extra early in the morning and we'd stand in the middle of the room, of the cabin, and we would shout, we would stand up and we would sing, oh, what a beautiful morning, oh, what a beautiful day. I think Craig and I used to do this at the men's retreats too. By the way, guys, that's off limits. Don't do that this year.
Thanks for the idea.
And we'd get lots of pillows thrown at us and stuff, but it was all in good fun. But nobody likes that, do they? Nobody likes to be woken up early in the morning with this big happy song when just give me 5 more minutes. I just want 5 more minutes. I think this verse is painting a picture similar to this. I think it's talking about a person who doesn't have a clue with what's going on around them. They're absorbed in their own little world. They've got their little conversations going on in their head of the next 10 things that they're going to be doing throughout the day, and ignorant of the fact that there's somebody sitting in church next to them who is crying. Did you hear what I just said? Did you hear what I said? Because see, some of you need to hear this, and I'm afraid this just went right over your head because you're thinking about the next 10 things that you're going to do. Are you aware of people around you? Are you cognizant that there are other people around you who have needs? Are you aware of this? Let's move on. Verse 15. A continual dripping on a very rainy day and a contentious woman are alike. Whoever restrains her restrains the wind and grasps oil with his right hand. The New Living Translation says, a quarrelsome wife is as annoying as constant dripping on a rainy day. Stopping her complaints is like trying to stop the wind or trying to hold something with greased hands. And really, this is a lesson about complaining. And no, this is not just an issue that women have trouble with. This is an issue that we all have trouble with. If we're not careful, we can fall into the rut about complaining and griping and being grumpy about everything. A new doctor has arrived in town, and he can just cure just about anything and anybody. Everybody's amazed at what he can do. Everyone except old Mr. Thompson, the town skeptic. Grumpy old Mr. Thompson went to visit this miracle doctor to prove that he wasn't anybody special. And he comes for his appointment. He tells the doctor, "Hey, doc, I've lost my sense of taste. I can't taste nothing. So what are you going to do?" The doctor scratches his head and he mumbles to himself a little. And then he tells Mr. Thompson, "Well, what you need is jar number 47. So the doctor brings the jar out, opens it up, and tells Mr. Thompson to taste it. He tastes it and immediately spits it out. That's horrible! That's horrible! "Well, it looks like I just restored your sense of taste, Mr. Thompson," said the doctor. And so Mr. Thompson goes home, very mad. 1 month later, Mr. Thompson decides to go back to the doctor and try one more time to expose him as a fake and by complaining of a new problem. "Well, doc," he says, "my new problem is I just can't remember anything." So thinking that he stumped the doctor, he waits as the doctor scratches his head. He mumbles a little bit to himself, and he tells Mr. Thompson, "What you need is in jar number 47. And before the doctor could finish his sentence, Mr. Thompson was cured and fled the room. Don't be the complainer. Don't be the complainer. Paul writes in Philippians 2, "Do everything without complaining and arguing, so that no one can criticize you. Live clean, innocent lives as children of God, shining like bright lights in a world full of crooked and perverse people." My grumbling, my complaining, your grumbling, your complaining messes up the picture. Do all things without complaint. Verse 17, "As iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friend." And I want to call this lesson Friendship's Secret. In verse 10, we talked about cultivating friendships because that may be the people that you're going to need when you're in trouble, right? Your family might not be ready, be there to help you out, so you cultivate your friendships. But there's more to friendships than just that. We become better through our friendships. We become better because we learn from each other. Now, it's been a while since I've shown a cat video, so I'm going to show you a cat video.
Dear kitten, under my tutelage, you seem to have gotten the hang of this being a kitten thing. I've taught you well, but you may wonder how I became so knowledgeable. It may be hard to believe, but I too was once a tiny buffoon, much like yourself, but cuter than you. Like way cuter. Kind of ridiculous, actually. When I was a kitten, I lived in a wire box with my brothers and one sister. My mama wasn't too keen on me being a cage fighter, but that didn't stop me from training day and night. My dream was to one day take on the beagle that lived on the other side of the room. That drooly-faced knucklehead was always taunting me. But that day would never come to fruition. Instead, my family eventually left, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about them. Except my sister. She was the worst. Dear kitten, they say that ignorance is bliss, but whoever they are must be pretty dumb. My own thirst for knowledge was quite ravenous when I moved away from home. So many things to touch, pockets to nap in, and things to fall off of. But unbeknownst to me, I was being observed. I've told you of Maximilian before, rest in peace. I looked up to him, quite literally. He was massive, and always in the places of up. It wasn't until he took me under his wing that I learned the dark arts of karate. I'm talking about shadow boxing, invisibility training, and even sneak attacks. Now that I think of it, he was actually kind of a jerk. In the end, I did get the last laugh. Because he's dead. Rest in peace, Sensei. I also learned a lot from my friend Cornelius. He didn't say much, but he did teach me patience, posture, and how to stare for a really long time without blinking. He was very good at it. Like, very good. We had a good thing going, but not all friendships are meant to last. Oh well. I learned many things in those early days, but perhaps the most valuable lesson of all is that the wet stuff is the best stuff. I came up with that. The first time it touched my lips, I knew I had chosen the right human. You know what I'm talking about. You chose her too. Kitten? Did you get any of that? Oh, no? Okay, well, fine. I am going to hang out with Richard. Missed a bunch of good stuff.
That was a waste of 3 minutes for the dog lovers. We learn from each other. Some people only want to learn from friends who will say nice things to them. The problem is that these may not be your true friends. Remember, the true friend will care enough sometimes to wound you. Remember, faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. We would do well to pay attention when a friend cares enough to hurt our feelings in order to warn us about a problem. You and I, we're kind of like a sword or an axe. And like an axe, we have work to do. And we will work better the sharper we are. Ecclesiastes 10:10 says, using a dull axe requires great strength, so sharpen the blade. That's the value of wisdom. It helps you succeed. And so how do you sharpen the blade of your axe? Iron sharpens iron. You rub up against each other. And sometimes that creates friction. But that's how we sharpen each other. Being involved in each other's lives. Iron sharpens iron. Friction in relationships, friends. Friction in relationships is not always all bad. Some of us want to run from the friction. Sometimes we need to learn from it. Verse 18, whoever keeps the fig tree will eat its fruit, or the one who takes care of the fig tree will eat its fruit. So he who waits on his master will be honored. In other words, don't expect something for nothing. Some people will expect to eat from a fig tree without ever helping to work to take care of the fig tree. Some people expect to be honored by someone important without ever having done anything to deserve it. If you want to eat, if you want to be recognized, do your job. Verse 19. As in water, face reflects face, so a man's heart reveals the man. New Living Translation says, as a face is reflected in water, so the heart reflects the real person. Let's move on. Verse 10. Hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. The Message paraphrase says, hell has a voracious appetite, and lust just never quits. Kind of two parts. There's two parts to this verse, and they complement each other. They explain each other. In the first part, hell and destruction are never full. Hell always has room for one more. There's always room for Jell-O. Well, hell always has room for one more. Nobody's going to arrive at the gates of hell and see a no vacancy sign on the door. Hell always has room for more. Good news is that God really doesn't want you to go to hell. God really doesn't want you to go to hell. He has loved you so much. He wants you to be in heaven so badly. So badly. He chose to allow his son to die in your place, making the payment that keeps you out of hell. That's how much God loves you. You know the verse, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him would not perish, would not go to hell, but have everlasting life. If you just turn from your sin, if you turn to God, trust in Jesus. Hell may be looking for you, but it'll never get you. So he says, hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. Just as hell is never full, our eyes are never satisfied. Satisfaction. 1965, Mick Jagger. Did you know that Mick Jagger was a theologian? Yeah, well, he's just speaking the truth there. He said, but I tried, and he tried. He's tried for 50 years. I was going to show you a more recent version of him, but it's just like sick to watch, a 75-year-old man acting like that. And you know what? You will get no satisfaction apart from Jesus. One area that we won't find satisfaction is in the amount of money we have. Someone once quipped, to figure the cost of living, just take your income and add 10%. So what's your cost of living? It's a little more than what I make right now. You get that? A wealthy employer once overheard one of his workers exclaim, "Oh, if I only had $100, I would be perfectly content." Well, knowing that his own money had not given him inner peace, he tells her, "Well, since I would like to see someone who's perfectly content, I'm going to grant your desire." And he pulls out a $100 bill and he gives it to her. And as he's walking away, but he can still hear her, he hears her remark almost bitterly, "Why didn't I say 200?" John D. Rockefeller, founder of Standard Oil, the wealthiest man in the world in the early 1900s, the world's first billionaire, was supposedly asked, how much money is enough? And he reportedly replied, just a little bit more. No satisfaction. The author of Hebrews gives us the ultimate source of satisfaction. Let your conduct be without covetousness. Be content with such things as you have, for he himself has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. You know, friends, why can I be content with what I have? Because you have Jesus. You have Jesus. And that's all. He's more than enough. More than enough. Verse 21, the refining pot is for silver and the furnace for gold, and a man is valued by what others say of him. The Message says, the purity of silver and gold is tested by putting them in the fire. The purity of human hearts is tested by giving them a little fame. So how you respond when somebody says, you're awesome! How you respond tells us a little bit about your character. A little bit about your character. Verse 22, though you grind a fool in a mortar with a pestle along with crushed grain, yet his foolishness will not depart from him. So, in other words, some people never stop being foolish. I hope that's not you. I'm assuming that since you're here today in church, you made it a little bit past the level of this kind of a fool, who will never stop being foolish. Verse 23, be diligent to know the state of your flocks and attend to your herds. For riches are not forever, nor does a crown endure for all generations. New Living Translation says of these two verses, know the state of your flocks, put your heart into caring for your herds. And look at this, for riches don't last forever, and the crown might not be passed to the next generation. I think that Solomon is painting a picture of a guy who owns a flock of goats. You'll see in a minute why I think it's goats and not sheep, but it's really one way or the other. Maybe he's got sheep and goats, who knows? He's painting a picture of a guy who's got a flock, but he also has other financial prospects out there. It might be some money in the bank. It might be that he's got a rich relative that he's waiting to kick the bucket and pass the crown on to. And Solomon is warning about counting on something that you don't have. You know, work with what you have. Don't count on the stuff that you don't have. He says, verse 25, when the hay is removed and the tender grass shows itself and the herbs of the mountain are gathered in. In other words, when all the crops are harvested and there's nothing left growing out in the fields, then he says, the lambs will provide your clothing and the goats the price of a field. You shall have enough goat's milk for your food of your household and the nourishment of your maid servants. So the idea is that if you would care for your flock, care for what you have already, it'll meet your needs. The big lesson is verse 23, know the state of your flocks. And I'm going to call the lesson here, the last lesson here, present responsibility. You don't have to actually own goats for this all to apply, by the way. We don't need to all run out and buy a herd of goats. Our flocks have to do with the things that we have responsibility for now. It might be your marriage. It might be your kids. It could be you're going to school. It might be your work. It might be your ministry. And a good shepherd doesn't just hope that his sheep will be okay out there in the field all by themselves. A good shepherd shepherds his flock. He spends time with his flock. I found a clip in Ethiopia. They do this a little differently when they spend time with their flock. They go bike riding together. I think this is quite cute. Now watch the sheep. Watch the sheep in the back. At one point he's saying, rah, rah. I think he wants to stop and go to the bathroom or something. Stop. You know, he's got the legs over his shoulder. He's grabbing on with one leg, and then he's got the other one. It's just hilarious. But he's with his flock. A good shepherd will lead his flock. Take care of your flock. A good shepherd leads his flock. A good shepherd feeds his flock, knows the needs, takes care of the needs of the flock. A good shepherd protects his flock. And when you take care of your flock, God says he'll take care of you. Know the state of your flocks. Be careful about leaving your flock and your responsibilities in order to win the big one, to get the crown, to get the big gold ring. Be careful about that. When David was called to be king, he would be king. But you remember what David was doing when he was called to be king? He was out in the field shepherding his dad's flock. When Elisha would be called to be the prophet, Elijah found him out in the field plowing with his oxen. He was taking care of business. Tend to the flock that you've got. Let God take care of your future. Let's stand and pray. And so, Lord, once again, we would ask, Lord Jesus, that you would be taking this, your word that we've been talking on and chewing on and thinking on. Help us to be like the wise man who would pay attention to the advice. Help us to put these things into practice in our lives. And I pray, Lord, that if there's anyone here who has never opened their life to you, friend, you know, hell has a big mouth. God doesn't want you going there. Don't put off till tomorrow what you should be doing today, which is turning your life to Jesus. Open your heart to him. Ask him to help you. In Jesus' name, amen. Let's end with a song.